we've got now. 1-1. Oh, Bowling, there it is.
What a take!
Punish.
What a moment. Bring on the third test.
He's got in.
Hi, I'm Robert Craddock. Tonight on Cricket Legends, I catch up with a man with over 8 million Twitter followers. He is one of cricket's most respected voices. When he speaks, India sits up and listens. He is the voice of subcontinental cricket. He is Harsha Bhogle, and he is a cricket legend. Welcome to Cricket Legends, Harsha.
Thank you very much, Kresh. Good to be here, but a bit embarrassed by the second word in the title.
No, not at all, because you used to host, of course, your own Cricket Legends show in India. So the obvious question, would you prefer to be the man with the clipboard or sitting where you are now?
You know, I've always done that, so that comes easier to me. And I don't need to have a point of view when I'm sitting there. I just need to ask the questions and sit back and listen to the stories. Now I'm suddenly thinking, oh, okay, what's Crash going to ask me? Oh, okay, do I have to say that right? So when I started, I was always the youngest on a crew. It's really funny when I'm among the older people now. And I'd look at all these cameramen and VT editors, as they used to be called then, and they were so good at what they did. I remember we had a mid-wicket cameraman from South Africa. Sadly, he passed away early, Johnny de Villiers. And we had one mid-wicket camera in those days. So he had to be on for the no ball. And as soon as the ball was bowled, he's here for the stumping. And then he found that the throw was going to the non-strikers end. So he's gone back there to look for the run out there. And then the ball is thrown to the keeper. So he's gone back here to look for the keeper here. One mid-wicket camera, that's it. So he's gone no ball, stumping, run out, everything in frame. And I said, wow. I remember going to Canada. Vinod Kambli played a short pass point, and I just pressed the lazy button and said, he got out playing a similar shot yesterday. Can we put that together? This is before the era of discs, let alone digital, where the VT editor has got to log every shot on large tapes. So he's quickly gone to his logs, pulled out the tape, put the tape in to the machine, brought it up to that point, queued it in there, done the replay on another machine, queued it there, got the two together. His name was Dexter Matthew. And I looked at Johnny de Villiers and Dexter Matthew and Rian Myberg and all these people. And I said, I'm fronting the telecast that these people are doing. If I get it wrong, then the work of all these geniuses goes wrong. And I said, one day I'll try to be as good as they are at their job. They were my heroes, the technicians. Even today, on a crew, I go and chat with the technicians.
And you've had several shows, and the one I always liked was the search for the new Harsha, when they had a nationwide competition to find the new broadcasting genius, and there was thousands upon thousands of entries, and you were actually a judge looking for someone like yourself.
The interesting thing was this was all before the major cell phone revolution in India. Now, everybody has a cell phone, everybody has many, many gigs of data, but they actually had to call up a number and leave their commentary clip. And then we'd get them in, we'd do an interview, and then they had to do a very, very difficult test that I wondered sometimes if I would pass. But they all did very well. At least 5 or 6 of them are still in the industry.
I've heard it said that there won't be another Harsha, in that the road you've taken, you know, as a non-player, could become extinct. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I wish that was not true, but I fear it is. I wish that was not true because I think we need storytellers in sport. I like the old format of caller and expert, caller and summarizer, and I think that works that works the best, because the role of the caller is to be the representative of the common man, of the viewer in the commentary box. And I don't think that should change, but it's long moved away from that to getting only former internationals. And I accept the fact that former internationals bring in a flavor that you and I cannot. So when the stars get into the commentary box, people are looking for them to be right. And if they're wrong, that's okay, but they're stars. You're looking to see how they're right. When you've got someone who hasn't been a player, when you've got someone, say like me, really, played school, college, university, senior division, that's it. Sometimes people are looking for you to be wrong. So you have no option but to be at your best every day, because you're running to stand where you are. So you don't have the option of being wrong. And I quite enjoyed living with the fact that I didn't have the option of being wrong, but I found that it was putting too much pressure on me. The pressure to be right. And one day I made this huge mistake just before going into a break. And you know, breaks in India are longer for 3 minutes. That mistake is simmering inside. And now I'm thinking, right, I've made this big mistake. How do I react? And as soon as we came off the break, I looked straight into camera like I'm looking now. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I made a mistake just before going off break. I was wrong. Sorry, my mistake. This is how it was meant to be. And I could almost see a load going off me.
Really?
Literally, physically. Sometimes you can just feel the pressure going off you.
Yep.
And I said, what's the worst thing that'll happen if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
I'll say, sorry, I made a mistake. And it became a little easier after that.
Harsha, who's been your biggest influence in commentary? I know you're a big Ian Chappell fan.
I'm a fan of Ian Chappell because I love his work ethic. I love Ian Chappell's work ethic. He's told me little things about work ethic on television that I will never forget.
Such as?
We were in England one day and the studio was very hot. It was one of those rare hot days in England. England doesn't heat well. So when it gets hot in England, then you don't know what to do. And the studio was, because it was too bright outside, the studio was all in black because the pictures get burnt out if there's too much light outside. And I might have said a couple of times, and it's very hot here, as you can see, we're sweating copiously. And after it was done, we came out and he just a little quiet tap on the shoulder. He said, mate, do you mind if I tell you something? I said, Chappelli, you? Me? Of course. And he said, if Kerry Packer was producing this, he would be on the phone right away telling, I'm not paying you to tell you how uncomfortable you are. I'm paying you to tell you what is happening. The average Joe sitting at home does not care whether you're uncomfortable. He wants to know what is happening. If it's uncomfortable, it is. And that had a huge influence on me because I immediately started relating it to other professions. Traveling sales executive, how uncomfortable is their job in Mumbai? And I said, nah, my job is. So I said that day, I will never complain about working conditions. I just admired his work ethic.
You weren't a classically trained journalist, were you? Your parents were both professors, but you were from another trade altogether, weren't you?
Completely. I did 5 years of chemical engineering. My biggest break in life when I got into India's leading management school, worked as an advertising executive, but I was doing this on the side. And then you sort of drift in. You never know where life takes you. You just say thank you very much to where life takes you. And life brought me here.
And Australia has been a significant part of your journey, hasn't it? And when you're linked with the ABC, how did that happen?
Good things happen when I come to Australia. So this is a good thing that's happening to me when I come to Australia. On a whim, I wrote to them. I knew somebody in Radio Australia, so I wrote to him. He gave me a number. I wrote to Alan Marks at the ABC, sent him a cassette of my work, and they said, OK, we'll give you a game and we'll take it from there. But I found that maybe I was his curiosity in Australia, because Australia probably hadn't heard an Indian accent for a while, especially someone who was willing to give as he got. And the ABC didn't give as much, so it was a sort of fair thing. But I enjoyed it, and it made a big difference in my life because this commentary was being heard in England. And so I got a break in the BBC after that. But also India didn't have television coverage of the 91-92 series. And so the only access they had was radio. So all of a sudden, this guy who'd done 3 test matches and a handful of one-dayers before coming to Australia got noticed.
It was interesting during that series because you were voted the sexiest voice on Australian radio.
You know why?
Remember that? Why?
You know why? Because there's no other part of me that the adjective can apply to. People have used other adjectives to describe me, but never that 7-letter word.
And I guess on the other side of the coin, you've had tough seasons, like in 2016, the BCCI basically stopped you from commentating on the IPL after it was accused that you weren't talking about the Indians enough in a T20 game. That was all a bit mysterious. What was that about?
It's still mysterious to me because nobody's looked me in the eye and said this was the reason. I was just told, we can no longer use your services. And I found that different people were telling me different things, which is when I realized that maybe I wasn't wrong. If everybody told me the same thing, and you can be wrong sometimes, that's okay, but people are telling me different things. We're getting to a stage in broadcasting across the world where increasingly cricket boards, like mega corporations, want to be very careful of how they're projected. And so they're involved far more in their own broadcast than they've ever been. Because, I mean, if you're working with Unilever or Procter & Gamble, on their website, you wouldn't be criticizing their products, would you? So maybe they're thinking like that now. So there's a little bit of a tightrope we walk these days.
Yep.
And I think that came in a few years ago, but like a bad monsoon, I think it's here to stay.
Let's talk about some of the legends. I know that you've been particularly close to Sachin Tendulkar over the years, and he actually wanted you to write his book, didn't he? To us, he's a mystery man, Harsha. He once came on a full tour of Australia without doing an interview. So the great enigma. Who actually is Sachin Tendulkar?
The geniuses are always very difficult to understand, Crash. Maybe geniuses are best admired. But I was lucky because I knew him from the time he was 14. And so I got to know him well. Also, there's things about him that I know that no one else would ever know. So you build trust after a while. And I found...
Such as?
There goes the old Crash again. No, but I got to know him well. I got to understand his work ethic very well. A lot of people think Tendulkar's talent. Everywhere I went, people were told, but Sachin is Sachin. As if to say, look, God made him separately and put him aside. Now, his work ethic was astounding. The way he looked at the game, he immersed himself in the game. In a sense, he was the master of the game, wasn't he? In India, he owned the game. And yet, he regarded the game, he looked upon the game as a servant would. The game was always bigger in his eyes than Tendulkar himself was. And that is what I'd like to tell every young cricketer who plays this game, that this game is always bigger than us. If it was bigger than Tendulkar, then it's not bigger than anybody else. So the humility that accompanied Tendulkar was always there. And I think that allowed him to get better and better and better and better. But the work ethic, the commitment to practice, I found that the geniuses practice harder than anybody else. Whether it was Woods in his prime, whether it was Jordan in his prime, Warnie himself. I mean, sometimes Warnie gives the impression that he's a bit of a larrikin and he takes life easy. No, when he was not getting the leg breaks right, he bowled and bowled and bowled till he got them right. So I think the geniuses work harder than anybody else. Tendulkar was very, very hard-working cricketer.
You've seen Virat Kohli's team become the first Asian team, not just first Indian, first Asian team to beat Australia in Australia. Begs the question, will Kohli become bigger than Tendulkar?
It's always difficult to know because the media changes every few years. Tendulkar was a product of an India that had just started to open up, and there was much more television than there'd ever been, say, in Gavaskar's time. Kapil Dev got the tail end of that. And when television opened and the major corporations came in, when liberalization happened in India, we opened our borders to trade, and there was Tendulkar waiting for it. So he benefited from that. But there wasn't much social media when Tendulkar was playing. Virat Kohli is the Instagram, Twitter generation, isn't it? So everything he does travels around the country in no time. He posts a picture of himself with Anushka, and it's got 100,000 likes in no time.
Next man in is Pat Cummins.
Get comfortable, Paddy. Dave Warner could be here all day at this race. Incredible from David Warner.
Oh, unbelievable start again. It was a great reaction, Juventus. One step over, one goal!
Out, Warner finally departs.
Hey, you're in, mate.
Kidding.
Foxtel Go. Catch the cricket live this summer, anywhere, anytime.
Can you believe that?
Waving his Wilson wand like there's no tomorrow.
Second match.
Oh, what a way to finish!
Harsha, isn't it extraordinary how India's changed? I mean, you came in the 1990s
With a manual typewriter.
Oh, did you really?
With a manual typewriter.
Really?
Yeah, because electric typewriters hadn't come and laptops hadn't yet arrived.
Yeah.
Storage was in megabytes, not in gigabytes.
Yeah.
Just about in megabytes. So you had to carry a manual typewriter. Learn to type Q, W, E, R, T, R, P, O, I, U, Y, U, A, S, D, F, G, F, semicolon, L, K, J, N, J. So I type with 9 fingers. Yeah.
That's an extraordinary story. But the India of the 1990s, or pre that, was so close, wasn't it? They would arrive in Australia and the captain would sit there down here and look at his feet, would barely look the world in the eye. Now there's this swagger. I mean, has that come with the changing of India as a nation?
It also comes with affluence. We were colonized for many years, and apart from taking away all our minerals and our wealth and converting India from one of the richest countries in the world to one of the poorest, we also lost our confidence. Because when you've been ruled over for 200 years, then you lose your confidence. And because India was left a very poor country, from when India was one of the world's major, greatest trade partners, it took a long time for India to come back into the rest of the world, and that's only happened very recently. But the relative affluence is a product of opening out. So today's youngsters, when they come out, when a Kohli comes out, when a Pandya comes out, or even whenever some of these guys come out, they carry a swagger with them because Kohli thinks, he looks at the Aussie players and says, you know what, I'm making more than you are. So I only hope the swagger stops there, because cricket's a cruel game. It can expose you when you play. But this is a very, very, very different India. You go and see, in India under 30 is a country that I'm amazed by every day.
Here's the interesting thing about modern India, is that for all the affluence and the confidence and the swagger, the bowlers who delivered the Border Gavaskar trophy in Australia, and a lot of the team, actually came from very humble origins, don't they? They're
A lot of them do.
But they may end up famous, but a lot of them were from single parents and impoverished. There seems to be a hardness about them.
Not just the bowlers. Not just the bowlers. Look at Hanuma Vihari, look at Virat Kohli. Every Indian player who's come up to play for India has seen adversity very early in life. It can work both ways. When you suddenly see fame and money, you can, like what we studied in chemistry, the Joule-Thomson effect, you can suddenly, from a pressurized environment, come into freedom. Or you can say, the pressure that I have seen in life, what is Test match cricket after all? That's a pressure that I have seen. And a lot of them come from that background, and that is the future crash, because they try harder.
Yep.
They try much harder than children of privileged backgrounds, because the downside for children of privileged backgrounds is too large. The upside is not that much. For these people, the upside is that large. They try harder.
What about fast bowlers in India? Suddenly they're there, aren't they, after all these years? Now, there was little, occasional one-outs like Zaheer Khan, but there's a posse of them.
Yeah.
You wonder whether this could inspire a whole new generation.
It already has.
Oh, really?
It already has, because we're not getting as many spinners coming through, but there are kids who want to bowl fast. And if we can look after Jasprit Bumrah, then I think Bumrah can be this figure that will inspire a lot of people to come up. Again, a fantastic story. Bumrah brought up by his mother. Mothers produce more athletes than fathers do. Certainly in India, that's the story. And if Bumrah comes up, then a lot of other fast bowlers will want to come up like him. But there's a young kid who's come out here called Khalil Ahmed, left-hander, played 2 first-class games, brought straight into the Indian side. There's another one who's come in as a replacement for Bumrah. There's Mohammad Siraj coming in. He is quick, an auto rickshaw driver's son. Mm-hmm. So you see, for them, the hunger crash, you and I will never, ever understand the hunger that these people have to succeed. We'll never understand that. You can pretend to understand the hunger, but you'll never understand it.
That's a very good point about the mothers. Courtney Walsh, Ambrose,
Everywhere.
Michael Kaspervitz, Glenn McGrath. The mother was the central
God's
figure.
greatest creation, the mother.
And what about Sunil Gavaskar? There's a school of thought that he's one of the most underrated players in the history of the game.
No.
One of the few batsmen who stood up to the great fast bowlers of the West Indies, Marshall,
Underrated
Roberts.
crash, because most of the media that came to India came from England. And England only rated those that played in their county system. And Gavaskar didn't play in their county system because he said, I don't want to play in a system that nobody watches. But Gavaskar taught Indians that fast bowling can be played. There was a feeling around the world that Indians can't bowl pace and bat pace. Gavaskar changed that perception that you can bat pace, and then Kapil Dev came in and spawned another generation. Post Kapil Dev came Srinath, post Srinath came Zaheer Khan, post Zaheer Khan came this whole group of people. And of course, as a 24-year-old, when India won the World Cup in '83, that was perhaps the biggest turning point, because it told a lot of us that we can win, and it told a lot of 10-year-olds in India that they could play cricket. Among those 10-year-olds was a Tendulkar, a Dravid, a Ganguly, and a Lakshman. And they looked up at '83 and said, right, we want to be there one day.
Isn't it funny how things shape a nation? You talked about the 1983 World Cup. And then 2020 cricket, of course, India rules it with the IPL. But it was almost, they weren't that hot on it almost at the start.
Didn't want to play it. Didn't want to play it. I tell you, so much about India. We are a country that believes in fate. And we just accept fate as it comes and things as they happen. T20 happened to India. India did not make T20 happen. Because India was the only country that didn't want to play the World T20. India got outvoted 9-1. And so India had to play. And it was with a sense of adventure that Dhoni took this young group out. It helped at that point that Tendulkar, Ganguly, and Dravid did not play the T20 World Cup. And so he had this group of young people. And then when India won the World T20, it was I mean, I was hosting the felicitation function. And I waited for 3 hours because it took them that long to come from the airport. But I had seen India play a T20 game in South Africa in 2006. And I remember borrowing somebody's line and saying, I have seen the future and it is here. And now, of course, with the IPL, it's just gone to another level. The IPL is a magnificent tournament.
And of course, you were an advisor to the Mumbai Indians
Yes.
on the first year of the IPL, when it was a different level of expenditure that anyone ever seen. Is there any one anecdote you look back and think, wow, this world has changed?
I remembered when Dwayne Bravo came into play for the Mumbai Indians in the first year. Lasith Malinga was supposed to play, and we had to find a replacement for him. So I called Tony Cozier in the West Indies. Tony Cozier gave me Dwayne Bravo's number. He was somewhere in St. Lucia or something. I called him up, and he said, yes, I'm okay. And they organized his passport. But he said, I have to be back in the West Indies on this date. They said, okay, you play this last game and go after that. And he said, how am I going to get there on time? They said, that's our problem, not yours. So we played in Hyderabad. He changed as soon as the game was over. Went straight to Hyderabad airport. There was a private jet waiting for him at Hyderabad airport, and he landed in Bridgetown, Barbados, an hour or an hour and a half before he was supposed to report for his camp. He was all alone on the plane.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes.
And with money comes power, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you're worried that India could have too much power?
Just as I would worry if England had too much power, or New Zealand or Australia or Pakistan or anyone had too much power. It is my thesis that everybody in power behaves the same way, whether it's US, the United States of America, politically and militarily, or whether it's India in cricket at the moment, or the United States with Olympic sport. Everybody in power behaves exactly the same way. So India is saying we're contributing 81% to the world economy. We want to get a major part of the returns, which is how it used to be with the Olympic rights for a long time. It's only now that it started reducing. So it doesn't worry me as much, because I think there's enough power centers. Where the game is going itself worries me, because when you depend too much on one source of income, your business already in trouble. So that worries, that part worries me a little bit.
And Harsha, where will cricket be in 30 years' time? I guess it's the question no one can answer, but you've got a gut feeling for us?
We've been saying that Test cricket is in trouble for 20 years. And we think T20 is big bad enemy that's devouring our beloved Test match cricket. T20 is protecting cricket. It is not devouring cricket. Without T20, cricket would be in deep trouble. What is hurting Test match cricket is streaming television, is changing lifestyles, is lower attention spans. It's a generation, cultural thing that's affecting Test cricket, not T20. So people look at T20 and say, that's the big bad infection that's coming in. No, it's the good gene that's coming in to protect our cricket. And I think T20 cricket will protect Test match cricket in the future.
And Harsha, you played with Mohammad Azharuddin,
Yes.
the former Indian captain, at college. Like, you knew him so well, you wrote his book.
Knew him well.
But then, of course, he was one of the first big victims of match fixing. He was initially banned for life.
He turns around and says it's never been proved in a court of law yet. It'll never be proved in a court of law in India, because match fixing isn't a cognizable offence. It's not a crime. You can. But yeah, I knew Azhar very well. I knew him as a very religious, very God-loving, and by some distance, the most generous cricketer I have ever met in life.
In what way?
He would give stuff away. If someone came and asked him for a badge, he'd give it away. If someone asked him, he'd give it away. And if he got man of the match money somewhere, he got an award in cash, he'd discover who needed the money most in the team and would quietly go and give it to them. But the world of fame does strange things to you, Crash. Fame and money are not friends. Fame and money are enemies wearing the wrong clothing. So sometimes people get affected by that.
So at that moment, when you found out that he was accused, and Hansi Cronje said he introduced him to a bookmate, the evidence was palpable and very believable. What was your reaction? Were you shattered?
Something inside me, yes. Something inside me did hurt, because while, I was not immune to the stories that the Winds were bringing in, but, and you knew that there was a lot of talk around and that there's no smoke without fire. And I could see in his lifestyle that he was spending a lot more money, and very different from this wonderful human being that I knew, but still something it hurt me within.
Do you believe him?
It's very difficult to say, Crash, because there's so much going on around the world, and there's a lot of people saying things and there's a lot of people not saying things. So I tend to err on the side of seeing it in black and white, seeing it in court. Also in India, you're never convicted. Hansi Cronje, for example, was Hansi confessed. But what I found interesting was that the only countries that took a firm stand against it, in spite of the wind swirling around the world of cricket, were actually India and Pakistan. No other country did anything about it.
Like the game was on its knees at the turn of the century.
It should have been on its knees all over the world.
Yeah.
As it turned out, it was on its knees in India and Pakistan because the rest of the world was turning a blind eye to what was happening. They refused to believe that the stories swirling around might have some truths to them, but India and Pakistan went ahead and actually banned players.
I think you said to me once that, was it your son said, Dad, just tell me one thing, Sachin's not involved. Is that correct?
I got an email from somebody at that time, 99, 2000, saying, if Sachin is in it, then what's left?
Yeah, what's left?
Yeah, and I think that generation of players that came through there, Tendulkar, Dravid, Lakshman, Srinath, Kumble, Ganguly, that generation, it brought cricket back to Indian houses far quicker than I thought it would, simply because of the extraordinary caliber of human beings they were. I also went on record as saying that time, if any one of these 5 or 6 is ever committing an act that we talk about, then I will give up cricket, because I have that much trust in these 5 or 6 people. India got trust that group of people again. And that is why I've always believed that in strife, you go to the best human being as leader. You go to the best group of human beings. If they can play sport to the same level, that's a bonus. But you play with the same group of human beings because the fan, who's the most important person in our game, the most important person in our game is not Kohli, is not Root, is not Williamson. It is that unknown entity that sits in front of a television set watching our game, or that pays money and sits uncomfortably in a stadium. That person has to believe in our game.
Well, Harsha, I think you've had a great career and you've brought so much colour and passion and flavour to international cricket. Thanks for joining us, a true cricket legend, Harsha Bhogle.
Thank you, Crash. I still can't come to terms with the second word, but that's okay.
No, you are.
Christmas has come early for the Australians.
Kohli departs.
They absolutely blew India away. Bumrah breaks through. A century that all of India can savour.
What a series we've got now. 1-1.
Oh, bowled in, there it is.
What a take!
Punished.
What a moment. Bring on the third test.
There's much more to the Claremont murders than anyone expected. Now the secret victim breaks her silence.
Who was waiting there?
In my toilet.
Catching the Claremont killer, the untold story, Thursday, February 4.
This program brought to you by Toyota. Cricket. Oh, what a feeling. Maccas. The El Macco and McRib are back. Ladbrokes. Back yourself this summer of cricket.